Let's continue exploring the universe within art and the art behind farming. I'm your host, OmLedu, and in this episode, we're going to build a rocket farm. It also has a custom Trident killer so you can get rid of those pesky spiders. And sorry if I mispronounced the name, but this video was requested by Sprinkles Icing. Thank you so much for leaving a request and for the amazing comment. You made me super happy, so I really hope you enjoy. This specific design will produce about 29 stacks of rockets per hour. But this farm is super easy to expand if you want even better rates. It will also produce about 3 double chests of these non-stackable items per hour, so if you want to keep them to get the potions and smelt down the gold, you totally can, or you can just send them all into lava. And last but not least, it will get about 2 double chests full of mob items per hour as well. Now most of the gunpowder and bones will be used to make the rockets, but eventually all of the bones will start rolling over, because this produces more bones than gunpowder. So once this chest is completely full of paper, all of the bones will then just continue on into your item sorter. And once your rocket chest gets full, all of your gunpowder will roll over as well. So if you want some gunpowder for TNT and stuff like that, just know that you can let your rocket chest fill up. The rates that I just listed were for a single farm that has 4 platforms. You can always build more farms, which we will talk about near the end, or you could build more or less platforms depending on how much work you want to do. This also gives me a chance to mention that most creeper-only farms are clickbait. Not only do they take about 8 times as much resources and time in order to build, but they actually give you lower rates, because they usually rely on the creepers wandering off the platforms on their own. Whereas this, for example, even at a medium size, gives you almost 10 stacks of gunpowder per hour, and you could always increase those rates by just increasing the size of the farm, and it's much easier and cheaper to build this. Now the first design I made, I was trying to use sugarcane farms in order to produce the paper for the rockets, but then I realized we can just use bones. But without further ado, let's jump into the build tutorial. Here is all of the stuff that you will need to build this, but you will need 3 auto crafters, not 2. I counted this out by hand, made a mistake, and didn't notice until I was editing the video, so you will need 3 auto crafters. But all of the stuff in the middle highly depends on how big you want your storage or if you want extra item sorters. And then for scaffolding, you will need a ton of scaffolding, especially if you want to expand the farm even bigger. And as for blocks and redstone, I didn't count these, just bring a few stacks of redstone and tons of building blocks. And then of course you'll need a looting sword. The first thing to think about when building this farm is where you want to build it. I would highly recommend building this over the ocean, because farms built over the ocean get better rates. But you could always build this above land if you so desire, just build it from the highest point in the nearby area. You want this farm to be at least 64 blocks above and away from any other block in the nearby area. So we're going to start off by using 64 scaffolding and just pillar all the way up. You could always use solid blocks if you want to. I just like using scaffolding because it's easy to place and because you can climb it up and down in case you fall off. But now we're going to build a platform that is 16 by 11. So go out by 16 blocks, then go over by 5 in each direction, and then fill this in so that you're left with a 16 by 11 platform. Now you could always make this platform bigger if you want to. This is just kind of the minimum size. Now 7 blocks away from the back, we're going to place down an auto crafter going into a double chest. This is the rocket chest. So you could always build this higher up so that you have more chests to contain rockets, but when these chests fill up, it will start rolling over the gunpowder, and so I'd like it to only have 1 chest for rockets so that we can have extra gunpowder for TNT and stuff like that if it fills up. And you could always expand down if you want to have more rockets later on. Either way, we're going to place a hopper going into each side of the auto crafter with a single chest on top of each hopper, then 3 solid blocks behind the crafter, with a repeater going into the middle block directly behind it. Then turn around and place a comparator on either side of the repeater with 5 solid blocks here in the back, with an observer in the center of these 5 blocks facing away. Then we're going to place a line of solid blocks on top of the comparators and then behind the chests. Now place 2 repeaters on either side facing the chests, with 3 redstone dust behind those repeaters. Now on the side of these back blocks, we're going to place a torch with a dust in between them in front of that observer. Then go back to your auto crafter, and we need to lock all but 2 of the slots, and those 2 slots should be vertical so that we can craft rockets. Then we're going to place hoppers pointed down into the top of these chests, then double chests on top of these hoppers going off to the left. So both of these should be hanging off to the left side. Now go around to the back, and in the middle we're going to place a temporary solid block so that we can place another block behind it and on top of it, like so. Now we're going to place an auto crafter next to this topmost block going into the right chest. So the mouth of the auto crafter should be pointed into that chest, so you need to place it while facing toward the back of the machine. Next up, we need another temporary block coming out of the back so that we can place a block on top of it, like so. Then we're going to place a comparator facing the back in this hole right here, on subtraction mode, so make sure that light is turned on. Then place a solid block on top of the comparator and on top of the auto crafter with 3 redstone dust on these back blocks right here. So this is what you should have. Now on the left side, we need to place a piece of glass next to the block with the comparator on it, with a comparator on top of that glass, then a block, then a dropper facing in any direction, just because we need to place 3 non-stackable items and 17 stackable items into that dropper, like so. A dropper is just a fairly cheap container that only has 9 slots. But next up, we need a hopper into the side of this top crafter, with a rail and a minecart with hopper on top of that. Then we need a piece of glass on top of this dust right here, then a solid block diagonally down from that, so place a temporary block there, then a solid block next to that minecart, then blocks diagonally up from that, like so. Now we need a piece of dirt directly on top of the minecart with hopper, so right there. Now in this hole, we need to place a bucket of water, then next to this dirt, we need to place a crafter facing up. Make sure that mouth is facing up. Then on top of the crafter, facing toward the dirt, we need a dispenser, then a piston on top of that, then an observer that is facing the same direction as the piston. So we need to place that from the back so that we end up with this. And this is where our sugarcane is going to go. So place a sugarcane right there on top of that dirt, and now just surround this in blocks. You can use glass or solid blocks. It really doesn't matter what you surround this in. But I would recommend using a light source block next to the sugarcane. So like a jack-o'-lantern or a sea lantern or a frog light, that will keep the sugarcane growing on its own so that you get some free paper. But then we need a block on top of the observer and a block on top of the hole, like so. Now we need to build the circuits for the sugarcane farm and for the bone meal crafter. So come down here and on the bottom of the crafter, place a temporary block so that we can place a block diagonally down from the crafter. Then we're going to build a 4x2 platform right here, like so. Now we need to place a solid block in that corner with a comparator looking through that block, then a repeater, then redstone dust in all of the other places, going back around so it points into the crafter, like so. Now we need to place a hopper going into the side of that crafter right there. Make sure that that hopper is going into that crafter. Then go back over here and we need to place another 4x2 platform next to this block right here. So right here is going to be another 4x2 platform like so. Then place a solid block next to the dispenser, 1 block away from that and then diagonally from that. Then a comparator on subtraction mode right here. Then a redstone dust on this corner. Then turn around, place a repeater right here with redstone dust on these 2 blocks. Now we need to place a solid block behind the dispenser and behind the observer with redstone dust on top of the bottom block, and then another solid block on top of that dust so that it pinches it, so that this dust is no longer connected. And that's it. Now we need to build the item sorter that will pull out the bones and the gunpowder. So come back over here, and next to this bottom block right here, place 2 target blocks, then 2 blocks on top of that. Then we need to place 2 blocks diagonally down from the targets. So from the bottom there, pillar up so that you can place 2 blocks right there, then 2 blocks diagonally up from that, then redstone dust in the hole and on top of those back blocks with glass on the top, and then comparators on top of these solid blocks facing toward the glass with redstone dust on top of the glass, like so. Now you may have to build a temporary platform, but we need to place hoppers that are pointed into these comparators. So crouch and aim at the comparators and make sure that these hoppers are pointed into the comparators. Then under the one on the right, we need to place a hopper pointed into the hopper going into the auto crafter. Then next to this left chest, we need a hopper going into it, then a chest on top of this hopper, going out to the front, like so, then a hopper going into the top of this chest, then a hopper going into the side of that hopper, like so. Make sure that all of this is going into each other and then all the way down into this chest. Then in this hole on top of the chest, we need to place a piece of glass with a solid block next to that glass, then a solid block down here next to that hopper under that chest, Then build this diagonally up and around to connect this with the solid block next to the glass, like so. Now we need a comparator next to this chest facing out, then redstone dust on top of these 5 blocks, and then on top of the glass. That will make sure that when it's full on paper, it doesn't waste any bones. But on this autocrafter right here, we need to lock 6 of the slots so that we have 3 horizontal slots so that it can make paper. Now on the other autocrafter over here on this side, we need to make sure that all but one of the slots are locked because this one is turning bones into bone meal. And with that, the majority of the redstone is now complete. Next up, we need to build the item intake line above our filter hoppers. So aligned with these hoppers, we need a temporary tower of blocks so that we can place hoppers above our filter hoppers, pointed away. And now this could be pointed really anywhere you want to. It really depends on if you want additional item sorters for your storage system or not. For now, just make sure that they are pointed away from the center of the farm, and you can worry about your storage system and item sorters later on. But we need to finish up the item sorters that we already have, so place redstone torches on the front side of these target blocks, and then in the filter hoppers, the ones that are pointed into the comparators, on the rightmost one closest to the sugarcane, we need to place a bone in the very first slot, and then 4 junk items that are never going to be in the farm in the last 4 slots. So 4 stackable items that can never be dropped by mobs. Then in the left hopper, we need a gunpowder in the first slot, then 4 more junk items in the last 4 slots, like so. And that's it for all of your autocrafter stuff. Now we just need to build the mob farm, and then talk about expanding your storage system, and we'll be done. So between that piston and hopper, place a solid block, then 4 more solid blocks, then 2 magma blocks. Now surround this in solid blocks diagonally up from that platform. Then go up again by 1 more block, and you can just leave the front open for now. But we're going to place a solid block diagonally up from that hopper, then 1 block above that hopper. Then more blocks diagonally up from the ones that we just placed, so that you're left with this little staircase type thing. Then over here on the right, we're going to place a temporary block sticking out, so that we can place 2 pistons facing toward the chamber that we just built. Break out the temporary block, then we need to place 2 more pistons diagonally up from those, like so. This is going to be our Trident killer so that we can easily kill spiders. But next up, we need to put redstone dust on top of the back 2 pistons. Now we're going to build a clock, so place a block next to those pistons, and we're basically going to build the number 4. So place a block underneath here on the right side, then break out the 2 middle ones so you're left with this. Place a redstone dust on top of the bottom block, then a repeater facing toward that dust up here in the middle, then a redstone torch right here on the side, and it should turn on and start freaking out. So place a lever right here next to this dust and turn it on to make it stop. Now we just need to close in the chamber. So I would recommend using glass so that you can see the mobs in there to confirm that the farm is in fact working, but also it's nice and satisfying to watch the mobs getting killed. So just place, 8 glass right here, or switch out some for solid blocks if you want to. It is all totally up to you. Just seal in this chamber. Now place a bucket of water on the backmost magma block, the one that's opposite from this hopper, so that all the water flows toward that hopper. Then we're going to go up by 1 more block in a little ring with a 2x2 hole on the left side of our 3 tall kill chamber. Now we're going to go up by 1 more block along the back and along the front so that we have 2 holes on either side. We're going to place magma blocks in those 2 holes, and these magma blocks are going to be right up against the top of those pistons right there. And they need to extend by 8 blocks, so you have 16 magma on either side. And in survival, you can crouch while standing on magma to avoid taking damage. So to place these, just crouch while you're placing the magma blocks so that you don't take damage. And again, they're going to stick out 8 on both sides. So there's going to be 16 magma blocks on either side. After that, we're going to go up by 1 block, diagonally up from our 32 magma blocks, all the way across, so that we have this little magma canal, like so. Then we're going to place 2 water buckets on both sides on the very last magma blocks. And since our magma blocks are 8 blocks long, the water should flow all the way to the hole and stop. Now we're going to go up by 2 more blocks along the edge here, all the way around so that we have a deeper canal that is 3 blocks deep. Then on the front and the back, we're going to build out 7 more blocks. Then fill in the entire platform, sticking out 7 blocks from the front and the back, except for the middle canal. So the front and the back platforms should be 8 blocks deep. Now we're going to go up by 2 blocks along all of the edges, except when we get to the front and the back, we need to extend it out by an additional block. We want to preserve that our platforms are 8 blocks deep. So the wall needs to be on the 9th block. So you will be left with two 18 wide platforms that are 8 deep. Now we just need to fill in these areas with scaffolding, except for in the middle. So just place one scaffolding on top of every single block on both platforms, like so. Now we need to place water buckets on top of the scaffolding, but I would recommend building a little temporary water source over here. So just pop out those blocks so that you can access it, build you a little temporary infinite source so that you can collect a lot of water. Because unfortunately, even if we place water buckets one block away from each other, it does not create source blocks. So we cannot pull from the water that we're placing. You actually have to place a water bucket on the back of every single block so that it flows up to the corner like so. Then do the same thing on the back of both sides so that you have water flowing up to the middle on both sides. Now we just need to build a roof directly above the water, like so. And you may have noticed at the beginning of the video, the farm that I showed had a block of air above the water, but that actually isn't necessary. So it's better to save space and place the blocks directly above the water. And if you want to stop at one spawning chamber, you can just stop right now, break out your infinite source, and fill in the ceiling, and it will work. The rates won't be as good as they could be, but all you need is a single spawn chamber. However, if you want to go ahead and expand it so that you get better rates, go ahead and leave this hole in the middle here, and we're just going to continue building the same thing over and over. So we're going to go up by 2 blocks along the edges, stick it out by 1 so that we preserve the 8 deep platforms, and then for these little gaps, either place torches or slabs or just fill it in with solid blocks to prevent things from spawning on there during the nighttime. Really, how you handle these little cutout sections is all totally up to you and the aesthetics of the build. So just go up by 2 blocks on each side so that you have 2 8 deep platforms, fill that in with scaffolding, then place water on top of those on the back row of blocks. And you can build up to around 8 of these. If you build any more than 8 layers, eventually the platforms will be too far away from your AFK spot to actually spawn mobs. So just don't build more than 8 layers of spawning platforms. But when you're done, fill in the roof completely, then either place torches or cover it in slabs. Basically, you just don't want mobs to spawn up here during the nighttime, and slabs will also prevent wandering traders from spawning. But when you're done, from the side of the farm toward where you want to AFK, we're going to build 23 blocks away from the wall. And you want this to be fairly centralized, not off to the side like I'm building here, especially if you're building it really, really big. The bigger you build it, the more centralized you need to be. Now also, if it's really tall, you want your spawning platform to be aligned with around the 2nd layer. Or if it's really short, you can just align it with the 1st layer. That's totally fine. Basically, if you're going to AFK, you want to be 23 blocks away from the wall, as dead center as you can possibly be. But if you want to do other stuff up here and not just AFK, you can hang out on the 23rd, 24th, or 25th block on a platform that is as wide as the farm, and no matter where you are on here, the farm will still work. But again, if you're AFKing, you want to AFK on a centralized block that is 23 blocks away from the wall of your farm. Now we just need a way to get up to our platform. We also need a way to access that lever. But before that, really quick, since this farm is now causing a shadow, I would recommend placing torches underneath the target blocks to cut down on light update lag. That will really, really help out since those torches will flicker whenever items are going through them. But now we just need to build a staircase up to our AFK platform, and it is totally up to you how you want to handle that, if you want to use a staircase or whatever. But now we also need a way to access this lever, so what I would recommend is going down by 2 blocks, then just building this over to your staircase or to however you're going to access your AFK platform so that we can turn the farm on and off. We also need access to this general area so that we can throw the tridents. So get your 4 tridents ready, and then we're going to build a little platform right here so that we can actually get to these pistons, and we just need to throw 1 trident at each block in front of each of these 4 pistons. So on these 2 blocks right here in front of those bottom pistons, then on this block right here, and this other block right here, the 2 blocks in front of the pistons. Now whenever we turn on the lever, all 4 of these tridents should start moving. Now the direction that they end up facing will depend on the orientation that you built this farm in, but luckily that does not matter. And we are so close to being done. But since autocrafters will waste things if the container gets full, we need a way for it to turn off if your rocket chest gets full. So place a solid block next to the topmost rocket chest with a comparator on subtraction mode, another comparator going into the side of that one, then a dropper with 8 non-stackable items and 63 of a stackable item, like so. So now the comparator that's on subtraction mode will only activate if that chest gets completely full. But we need to tie in redstone dust from the subtraction mode comparator all the way to the redstone dust in the back here that the observer is looking at. We'll also need a repeater coming out of the subtraction mode comparator, like so. Again, since autocrafters will waste items, this will just prevent that from happening. And the very last thing that we need to do is in this autocrafter down here that will craft the rockets, we need to place at least 1 gunpowder and 1 paper into each of the slots, just so that it doesn't end up with 2 gunpowder or 2 paper. Once you have 1 of each, it will be forever okay. And that is it, you are now totally done. There are a few more things that I would like to talk about though, the first one being how to expand your storage system with item sorters. So I'm going to build a non-stackable item filter right here, 1 block away from the item sorters that sort out the bones and gunpowder. I would recommend building this. Even if you don't want to sort out all of the different types of items you can get from this farm, I would at the very least filter out all of the non-stackables, because they can really clutter up your chest and become really annoying to deal with. So just building this non-stackable item filter right here. So from there, you can either funnel it down into tons of chest, which is what I actually like to do. I like to use the bows to smelt the gold to gain a little bit more gold out of this farm, plus I like having the potions as well. So just place a line of chests with hoppers going down into those chests, aligned with the item filter. Or of course, you can use the hoppers to shove all of those items into droppers or dispensers, and then have a clock attached to that will just get rid of all of those items into either cactus or lava. That is all totally up to you. But as for the rest of your storage system, if you want to add more item sorters, you totally can. Just as an example, we're going to continue building it in this direction, so skip a block from your non-stackable item filter and build your item sorters right here. The item sorters I'm having you build is your standard overflow protected design. Since this is a farm, you wouldn't want it to overflow. But of course, you can always build as many item sorters as you want, or you could even veer the input hopper line off over to the left or to the right and build your storage system somewhere else. That is all totally up to you. If you're not sure how to build custom storage with item sorters, I have a few video guides that might be able to help you out. I will link those here on the screen and in the video description. So no matter what kind of storage system you're trying to build, hopefully those guides can help you out. But finally, place our filter hoppers going into the blocks opposite of the comparators. Now we just need to connect these hoppers down to some chests. And the main reason that I mentioned that you can veer off the item sorter over to the left is that even with sorting just 4 items, we're pressed right up against our scaffolding ladder. So this gets pretty cluttered pretty quickly, especially if you're sorting out more items than that. But always remember that if you have hoppers pointed down into each other, you can always substitute out every other hopper for a chest. Just keep in mind that on item sorters, the hopper underneath your filter hoppers needs to be a hopper, not a chest. So the hoppers directly underneath the hoppers that are pointed into blocks. The hoppers pointed into the blocks are your filters. So on those, we need to place the item that you want sorted in the very first slot, and then 4 singular stackable junk items in the last 4 slots. And these junk items either need to be named on an anvil, or they need to be something that no mob can ever drop. And if you want to build an item sorter for every possible item from this farm, keep in mind that eventually bones and gunpowder will run over. So you will need an additional item sorter for bones especially. Bones will start rolling over before gunpowder does. Gunpowder will only roll over if your rocket chest gets full, but bones will just start rolling over on their own over time. And lastly, we need a rollover chest. Or if you don't have any item sorters at all, you still need a chest for all of the drops to end up. So we're just going to build these anywhere that we want to, place hoppers going into the back of all of these chests, and then connect these hoppers with our intake line, right there. So this is also an example that you can run your item sorters or your storage system anywhere that you want to, simply by changing where that hopper input line goes. Now that we're done talking about storage upgrades, it's also important to note that this farm will not immediately start producing rockets. The crafter will need to fill up completely with a full stack of paper and a full stack of gunpowder, and then also the filter hoppers that are filtering out the bones and the gunpowder will also need to fill up. They will end up with 41 items in the very first slot. So if you just put a single gunpowder and a single bone, in the front of these hoppers, you will have to wait until they get 41 items before they even start, turning stuff into paper. So just give it like 15 to 30 minutes at the most. I mean, it should start producing rockets way before then. You just need to run it long enough for it to get around 3 stacks of gunpowder and 3 stacks of paper before it actually starts producing rockets. And as with any farm that uses a Trident killer, never ever ever leave this on when you log out or when you leave the area. There is a chance that the Tridents can mess up if you do either of those things. But to collect the experience, we're just going to butt up against this wall right here. And if you have multiple people who want to use this farm, remember that the looting effect will only apply if the player who placed the Tridents is holding their looting sword. And you won't be able to just pick up these Tridents by simply walking over here. Luckily, there is a really easy way for you to do this. Place a staircase right here, and then a trapdoor next to that piston, and open it up. Then stand here and close it, and you'll enter crawl mode, and we can crawl in this hole and pick up all 4 Tridents that way. So again, if you have multiple people using this farm, and you want to switch out who threw the Tridents, just place that staircase and that trapdoor so that you can pick them up and rethrow them. Now I was super duper happy with the rates provided from just a 4-layer farm, but if you built the 8-layer one, and you're still not getting the rates that you desire, or if you're just bored and want something to do, you can build up to 4 of this farm in the same area. So if this block right here was 23 blocks away from the wall of that farm, then this block right here needs to be 23 blocks away from your other farm. So the block in between those 2 blocks will be 24 blocks away from both. So count out your 23 blocks and build the wall of your farm right there. And again, you want to be as centralized as you possibly can, especially if you want to maximize the rates, or build multiple of these farms. Now, if you just build 2, you can still kind of hang out anywhere on this platform that's 3 wide, and it will be okay. But if you build 3 or more of this farm, 3 or 4, you can no longer move around freely on that platform. If you have a 3rd farm, you are now limited to this 3x3 area right here. Because if you start wandering around, it's going to completely turn off one of the farms. And again, you want this platform really to be as centralized as you can get. So again, especially for AFKing, you want to stand aligned with one of the 2 center blocks on the farm. And if you build multiple farms, this block right here will be 24 blocks away from every single farm in all directions. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope it made sense, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. Let me know what you did or didn't like about the video. If you have any questions or requests, I will do my best to help you out. Or if you don't know what to say, just tell me hi. I would love to hear from you. Your support is what allows me to keep making videos, so just know that you are super duper important and you make me extremely happy. In the video description is a link to my Discord. You can join that Minecraft community to share pictures of your builds, talk to me about redstone, ask me questions, or just anything Minecraft related that you would like to do. And a big shout out to all of my subscribers, all of my supporters, and to you. Y'all are all totally amazing. Thank you so much for your continued support. And if you're new to the channel, just know that not only do I have farm tutorials, but there are also tutorials for making mini games, how to learn redstone, making note block songs, tips and tricks, and more. So definitely go peruse. I am sure that there is something that you can find that you enjoy. And if not, again, let me know what you would like to see, and I will do my best to help you out and get it done. So I hope to see you again soon. But until then, I've been your host, OmLedu, building an awesome farm with you. And reminding you, as always, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye!